I spent some time with my girlfriend over in the church, and I wash most of the dishes. I just, she doesn't like to wash dishes. I like to wash dishes.
Why?
Well, it's like a mantra. The Buddhists have this thing where they say, like, carry water, chop wood, and just do your job, just simple job, just do it. And it's a way to peace, and it's like, you're doing something, your mind is still pretty free, you don't have to, it doesn't take too much mental effort, scrubbing away, washing dishes, and you're kind of left free to be you, and at the same time, you're doing something that has a little bit of positive input in things.
Are you cutting me some?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you. Looks a little bit like marijuana.
Yeah, it looks like it's got one of those funky looks about it. It looks like it's got something going on there.
Yeah.
And it does.
A little wild. Yeah.
One of my engineering professors told me when I was going to college, he said, civil engineering is the second oldest profession. And I didn't know what he meant by that. But I began to learn that as I became a civil engineer and worked in the field. And I decided that I really didn't want to do this anymore. And so one day, I owned an office building with a partner. And I went into my partner's office and I said, Woody, he was a lawyer, and I said, Woody, I want out. I don't want to be here anymore. I just want out. I said, you got to buy me out. He says, I don't have any money, which was bullshit, but I said, okay. Well, I said, you got $1? And he says, yeah, I got $1. He says, all right, I want the $1, but you write up the deed and all that shit, and I'll be back in an hour, we'll sign it, and I'm out of here. So he wrote up the deed, came back, and says, you get the $1? He says, yeah. So I signed the deed. He says, where's my $1? He gave me 4 quarters, wouldn't give me a $1 bill. He was afraid I was going to frame it. So I said, well, what am I going to do with these 4 quarters? So I went down the street. There was a hot dog stand. And I used to eat lunch there occasionally when I had my business. And so I went to the hot dog stand guy. Hot dogs were $2.50, But I went to the guy, I said, listen, I just sold my business. I got $1 for it. That's all I got, 4 quarters. You got to sell me a hot dog for $1. He says, well, all right. You've been a good customer. Okay, I can do that. So I bought the hot dog, and it was the best hot dog I ever ate. The absolute best hot dog I ever ate. And then I said, well, I gotta do something. So I started washing pots and pans. Now, I was married at the time, and for those of you who have been involved with a wife, you can imagine how well this went over when I came back that night and told her what had happened that day. And so she was a bit upset with me, but we had kind of pulled things. We'd kind of pulled each other's chain quite a bit over the course of our marriage, and so this was just another lump in the road. It was no big deal. We got over it. And, so I ended up cooking for a lot of years, and one of the places I cooked was the Camelot Cruise Boat out of Haddam, Connecticut. It was a dinner cruise boat. We'd have 400 drunk people on board every night, eating dinner and watching a sort of an improv play about a murder mystery that supposedly happened on the boat. And I was washing pots and pans for this, you know, and after a while I got so, you know, they needed somebody to run the engine room, so I ran the engine room, and then they needed somebody to work the ropes on the deck, and I did that. And then I ended up being the guy who used to dock the boat a lot of times, because you know, the captain liked me, and I could bring the boat into the dock. And so, you know, but I'd be, you know, in my apron, my dirty, wet apron, and my bandana on my head, and I'd run up to the pilot house and dock the boat when we came into the dock. It was really rather an interesting thing. And I was into photography too. I was a photographer, and one of the things I had been during my professional life was a professional photographer, and working mainly with portraits. So this captain, we used to take these boats sometimes across the Long Island Sound to Long Island, and so one of the captains had this deal. He made a little extra money. He had me take pictures of the people on the way over, and we'd have it developed at a 1-hour photo shop, and then he'd sell them to the people on the way back. Now sometimes I wasn't scheduled to go on that boat. I was scheduled to go on the other boat, but he still wanted me to take the pictures. So I used to drive my car down to Old Lyme and park the car down there in this marina. And then he'd pick me up and take me up to Haddam, and I'd get on the boat in my outfit for being a deckhand, and with my camera, and I'd shoot pictures of all these people going down the river. And then when we got down to Old Lyme, the mouth of the river, he'd say, okay, and I'd strip out of my stuff, hand him the camera, he'd slow the boat down, and I'd jump overboard and swim ashore and get in my car and drive back up, and then work the day on the other boat, you know. And it was like something out of a James Bond movie. It was really kind of a wonderful thing. I kind of felt like, God, I'm in my mid-40s, and I got this really wonderful job. I'm not making, you know, I'm making like $6 an hour, but it was like just so much fun, so much fun. And one night actually, I'm looking up, you know, we had night vision goggles, you know, like, well, but just binoculars, you know, and I'm looking up and I see this weird cluster of stars up kind of in this, it was a summer night, look up and I see this. I said to one of the mates who was pretty good with astronomy, I said, what is that cluster? He says, oh, that's Broca's cluster. That's the coat hanger cluster. See, it looks like a little coat hanger. I says, oh yeah, I see that. That's pretty cool. And it kind of rekindled this old interest. And I studied everything I could get my hands on astronomy. Everything. I took books out of the library. I bought books. I read. I studied. I looked at the stars. I got a planisphere. And I'd go out in the middle of the night, and in one hand I'd hold the planisphere up, and in the other hand there'd be a flashlight. And then it's at night in the middle of my street where I lived in Wallingford, and I hold up the planisphere and I look and say, okay, there's the Big Dipper, and that's the constellation next to it. There's Leo over there, and I look, okay. And so I'd learn a constellation. I did that for a year, and I learned all the constellations in the sky that you could see around here. And then I started learning some of the stuff that you could see with binoculars, you know, and I wanted a telescope, and I didn't have a lot of money, so I built my own telescope, and I kind of came up with this sort of unique design. I remember I had this friend of mine. This guy was an amazing dude. He was actually a musician. He was trained as a musician. But he had worked as a home appraiser and got sick of it, and had gone into business of making telescope mirrors. And he lived over in Northford, not far from me. And he gave me his third mirror he ever made. This guy ended up making parts for NASA out of his basement that went into space. Telescope mirrors that NASA flew in spaceships in space, and he made them. Just incredible guy. And anyhow, so he made me a mirror, and I made a telescope. It was an 8-inch mirror, and I took a a couple of sheetrock buckets and made a truss tube, and then I went down to a bowling alley, and I said to the guy, listen, I need an old beat up bowling ball. You got one? And he says, yeah. I said, so what do you want it for? He says, I'm making a telescope. And he kind of looked at me like I was totally out of my mind, which I probably was, but he did give me the bowling ball. And I made this bowling ball. I got a little frying pan at the flea market, a small one, and I put it on a surveyor's tripod. I was an engineer, so I had a surveyor's tripod. I put it on top of that, and so I had this telescope that moved on a bowling ball on a frying pan, and it was really weird. And then I made a few others, and one night I remember I was at a star party and coming back, and my friend says to me, he says, Bob, you gotta make these with kids. You gotta teach kids how to make telescopes. And I ended up making like 400 telescopes with kids. I ran telescope making camps at summer camps, and made like 400. And I still make telescopes. I'm gonna make one with you. Mm-hmm. And so I got very interested, and I taught adult dad astronomy, and ended up working in the planetarium down in Bridgeport, down at the Discovery Museum, Henry B. DuPont III Planetarium. My wife got sick, and she got Alzheimer's, and I took care of her. I remember she had always wanted to be a hippie. She had never been able to be a hippie, felt like, and she wanted to travel around in a Volkswagen van. So before she got too bad, I bought this Volkswagen van, and we traveled all over the country. Just traveled all over. Went out to Death Valley, different places all over. And finally she got too sick to travel anymore. And she ended up, she couldn't handle it anymore. She committed suicide. She jumped in front of a car coming up 91, out in front of a tow truck coming up 91. Was killed instantly. I couldn't stay in the house. I stayed in. My buddy had a place he looked after up in Bethany. And I said, mind if I stay up there in my little Volkswagen camper? And he said, no problem. And I stayed there for a while in the camper. And he says, no, I want to build a wigwam out in the woods. And so I said, all right. So I, got the bent sticks and made like a Native American type wigwam. I think he thought I was going to stay for like 2 weeks initially, but instead I stayed for 3.5 years in this wigwam. Ran into this woman down at the Unitarian Church. Started hanging out with her. So that's kind of where I am now. I mean, I got this little apartment up in Cheshire, and I live part-time at the Unitarian Church, and I kind of discovered New Haven. This is Hampton, but this is like part of New Haven. This is East Rock, and I find New Haven such an alive, beautiful, I want to say juicy place. It's a juicy place. It's kind of the real deal. It's like you meet a lot of people here that at least I do, that I feel very, very much connected with. People that are not, not your average bear. I don't consider myself an average bear. As my woman Fred says, I'm Abby normal. Abby normal. Not normal. And but you know what? I got a smile on my face.
You did?
So I don't know. That's a little bit about me.